Hey everyone, I'm here to help you relax and drift off tonight. If you enjoy using these videos to fall asleep, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more calming content. Share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I'd love to know. Now settle into a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and let's start unwinding together. Leora Dawnfell was a celebrated bard of the court of High Crest, her lute bright with love songs and ballads of triumph. Yet in her heart lay an emptiness she could neither fill nor translate into music. When her mentor, Master Arin Tolak, perished under mysterious circumstances, she discovered among his belongings a tattered map and a single line of verse. Seek the silver harp in Stormreach's tower. Let sorrow's song complete the singer's hour. Torn between dread and curiosity, Leora resolved to confront the instrument of grief itself. She bade farewell to Highcrest, her lute swathed in velvet, and set forth into the gale-swept hills where the cliffs of Stormreach rose like shattered teeth against the sky. The path to the tower was narrow and treacherous, carved into crumbling basalt and lashed by ceaseless winds. Seabirds wheeled overhead, crying warnings as Leora climbed. Beneath her footsteps roared the white-capped sea, its spray tasting of salt and sorrow. By dusk she stood before the tower's weathered door, planked with iron and etched with the visage of a weeping maiden. She pushed inside. Within, spiral stairs wound upward, each landing littered with faded tapestries depicting the queen's grief. Children's laughter in bright gardens, then empty cradles and winter's chill. Leora's heart tightened as she ascended, yet her resolve remained firm. At the tower's apex, Leora found the chamber of the silver harp, its walls draped in midnight blue velvet, faint motes of dust glinting like trapped stars. In the center stood the harp, its ashwood frame carved with sorrowing angels, its silver strings calling to her like drawn breaths. Leora approached, trembling. The air pulsed with an invisible lament. She gingerly touched a string. Nothing. Then pressed her ear against the soundboard. A single chord drifted through the silence, low and quivering, as though 1,000 hearts wept as one. Trembling, Leora lifted her lute and began to play a single note in reply, an offering of music born of loss. The harp's strings shimmered and responded, weaving her note into its mournful melody. The chamber's candles flickered as the silver harp took Leora's music and transformed it into sorrow's true song. As the harp's melody swelled, the chamber warped. Walls faded into moonlit mist, and Leora saw visions in the strands of silver sound. The queen's children playing by streams, then taken by fever's cruel hand. The queen weeping alone in a ruined garden. The harp being forged from the queen's tears and the wood of a ghost oak. Leora felt those sorrows as her own, her mentor's death, the impermanence of joy, the gnawing ache of absence. Tears streamed down her face. Her lute slipped from her grasp. The harp's melody wrapped her in its embrace, each chord a pulse of collective grief. She sank to her knees, overcome, wishing only to banish the music in the sorrow it conjured. But as the final notes quivered and faded, a single line of the queen's own lament echoed, "In sorrow's depths, true grace is born." From that line, Leora understood. The silver harp did not wish to destroy, but to heal. Its sorrow must be faced, not feared. Gathering her strength, she rose, wiped her tears, and lifted her lute once more. Tentatively, she played a gentle counter melody, a song of remembrance and hope, of honor to those lost and the courage to endure. The harp responded, its chords brightening into a bittersweet harmony. Light filtered through the chamber's fog, and the queen's phantom silhouette appeared, bowing her head in gratitude. The angels carved on the harp's frame seemed to breathe relief. As Leora played for a final time, the chamber dissolved into dawn's light. She found herself back at the tower's base, the silver harp silent behind her, the echo of its song singing still in her blood. Lyra returned to Highcrest at sunrise, her lute in hand and her heart alight with both sorrow and hope. In the court's grand hall, she performed a new ballad, The Lament of the Silver Harp, its melody woven from loss and redemption. Courtiers wept and cheered, for they knew grief's sting and the balm of song. From that day on, Lyra was no longer merely a minstrel of joy, but a keeper of sorrow and hope intertwined. She traveled the realm, sharing the silver harp's lesson, that sorrow, when acknowledged, transforms into the deepest grace, and that every heart, even broken, can sing again. In time, the path to Stormreach's tower grew over with bramble and mist. The silver harp remained, waiting for the next soul brave enough to face its song of sorrow. Lyra's ballad passed into legend, inspiring bards for generations. And on storm-tossed nights by candlelight, if one listens with a compassionate heart, they can still hear a distant echo, a single silver cord woven through the wind, reminding all that in sorrow's embrace lies the seed of redemption, and in music's tears, the promise of dawn. Annabel Crow, a grieving archivist, received an unmarked package on the eve of All Hallows' Eve. Inside lay the veil mask, cradled in velvet stained with time. No note, no clue, only the mask's cold presence. Annabel had spent years documenting vanished families in Greyhaven's churchyard, recording their headstones and epitaphs. Her own mother's tomb lay among them, the name eroded, Margaret Crow, beloved mother and wife. Annabel trembled with sorrow as she clasped the mask. She had come to Greyhaven seeking solace among dead memories. Now the mask offered the promise of forgetting, erasing the grief that hollowed her nights. That very evening, with thunder rattling the casement, Annabel placed the veil mask upon her face. In the flicker of candlelight, Annabel stared into her mirror. The mask's steel filigree traced elegant patterns across her features. She touched her cheek and forgot the ache of missing her mother. The world felt light, as if sorrow had never taken root. She smiled for the first time in months, yet as dawn broke, unsettling gaps emerged. Over breakfast, she could not recall the color of her mother's favorite scarf. When asked about her research into the graveyard's vanished families, her mind went blank, yet she sensed she once knew. Annabel's journals lay sealed in a drawer, pages unwritten. The mask had not only banished pain, it had stolen fragments of her past. Fear seized her. She rushed to remove the mask, but found it fused to her skin as though grown into her flesh. Panic flushed her spine. Annabel staggered back, realizing she had traded grief for oblivion and lost herself in the bargain. Desperate, Annabel returned to Greyhaven's ancient archive. There she sought Dr. Emile Sarton, a professor of arcane artifacts. Emile examined the mask by lamplight, humming with grim fascination. Emile, this is the veil mask, rumored to bind forgotten truths. Legends say its face grants peace, but buries memory in its wake. To remove it, one must relearn what was lost. Annabel shivered. But how? I don't even know what I've lost. Emile tapped his ledger. The mask veils truths in thematic clusters. To recover them, you must confront those themes in your life. First, your mother. To find her memory, return to her grave and speak the words she taught you. That afternoon, Annabel climbed the hill to her mother's tomb. Thunderheads gathered. Standing before the moss-covered headstone, she closed her eyes and whispered the lullaby her mother once sang. Sleep, my star, in gentle light, dream of days both warm and bright. The wind stirred and Annabel felt a trembling deep in her chest. The masked filigree cooled and loosened. She reached to remove it, but still it clung. Yet in that moment, a flash of memory ignited. Her mother's voice, soft and strong, humming lullabies in the nursery. Tears streamed down Annabel's cheeks. When she opened her eyes, the mask had shifted. One filigree line now etched over her right temple, as if marking progress. She hurried back to Emile, clutching her mother's scarf as proof of her restored memory. Emile studied her scarf and the altered mask. You've reclaimed your first truth. The mask allowed you to recover it, but only if you willingly faced the pain you'd hidden. He tapped the mask's edge. Next, your own betrayal. What do you regret most in your work? Memories flooded Annabelle, forging a falsified entry to spare a grieving widow embarrassment, altering genealogies to protect a friend's reputation. Shame scorched her as she confessed. Annabelle, I erased their stories in service of comfort. I betrayed history. As she spoke, the mask's filigree cracked along the left cheek. Annabelle felt warmth and a pang of loss as another memory fell into place. The widow's tearful thanks, the friend's relieved embrace. The mask lifted an inch from her skin, but did not fully release. Emile warned Annabelle that the final truth would strike deepest, a betrayal of self. To free yourself, you must reveal the secret you hide from your own heart. That night, Annabelle stood before the mirror in her study. The mask felt both tighter and looser, as though throttling and freeing her at once. She gazed at her reflection, voice trembling. I loved someone I never allowed myself to grieve. My brother, lost so many years ago. I buried that love beneath my duty. She spoke his name. Thomas. The mask's filigree shattered in a gentle cascade. Like petals drifting on a breeze, it fell away. Annabelle watched her reflection, her true features, unadorned, return. Her eyes blurred with tears, but a clarity shone within them that had never been there before. The next morning, Annabelle returned to Sablegate Cemetery, where her brother lay unmarked among the stones. She placed her mother's scarf in the clockwork mass fragments upon a fresh marker inscribed, Thomas Evern Crow, beloved brother. As the breeze played among the letters, she felt a soft, sorrowful sigh, an echo of the mask's power, rising into the sunlit sky. The fragments gleamed once, then dimmed, becoming ordinary glass and metal. Annabelle resumed her work at the archive, her journals brimming with restored truths and recovered voices. She preserved the story of the veil mask and its lesson for future generations, sealing its last fragments within a locked chest. Visitors whisper of the mask's power, but none dare wear it, fearing the price of forgotten truths. Annabelle's nights now pass in peaceful dreams, guided by memories both tender and painful alike. And on rare moonlit evenings, when the wind stirs the ivy on the chapel wall, she can swear she hears a faint murmur, an echo of voices set free by her courage. Truth, once veiled, may linger in shadow, yet in our hearts it finds the dawn. 18-year-old Alistair Evern had never seen Sable House except in photographs. A sprawling mansion cloaked in ivy, its windows dark under stormy skies. After his parents' sudden deaths, he was summoned from his life in the city to inherit the estate and its legacy. The carriage wound up the hill as clouds swallowed the sun, and Alistair's heart quavered with a mixture of dread and awe. Inside, the staff greeted him with solemn bows. The grand hall lay silent, save for the hush of hushed footsteps. There, on the far wall, glowed the night watcher's single numeral, 86,400. Alistair approached. His reflection rippled in the clock's black frame. He remembered his grandfather's warning. Never stay past the stroke, boy. The clock marks more than hours. Yet as Alistair explored the house's corridors, its library of leather-bound grimoires, its portrait gallery of stern ancestors, he felt an irresistible pull toward the clock's secret. Night fell swiftly, and Alistair found himself drawn back to the grand hall. He watched the numeral tick downward by the firelight's glow. With each subtle change, the air grew colder, the shadows deeper. He tried to read by candlelight in the library, but pages blurred as though resisting his gaze. Whispers curled at the corners of his hearing. Be ready, the hour approaches. As the numeral dropped below 43,200, watching half a day elapse, Alistair's curiosity overcame caution. He sought the clock's mechanism. Behind the hall's marble mantel, he found a secret panel revealing brass gears engraved with sigils of crescent moons and hourglasses. A small keyhole lay at the center. Trembling, Alistair fitted the ancestral key into the lock. The gears clicked, and the clock's back opened to reveal a twisting maze of bronze cogs beyond mortal sight. A voice whispered behind him, "Turn, turn, until it ends." He spun a single wheel, and the numeral flickered, revealing a hidden glyph of a raven. Alistair's breath caught. He realized he had tampered with something far older than time itself. In the nights that followed, Alistair's slumber was haunted by nightmares. Raven-winged strangers circling the mansion, voices chanted in a dead language. Footsteps padded through empty corridors. Each morning, the clock's numeral ticked relentlessly toward zero. Alistair felt the walls press closer. The hush deepened into a weight on his chest. Desperate, he sought counsel with Esme Whitaker, the house's elderly historian. She lived in a turret room lined with vellum scrolls. Her kindly eyes were shadowed with fear. "Esme, the clock was created by your ancestor, Alistair II, who sought to imprison a family curse. The Night Watcher counts down each soul's final day at Sable House. He believed if we faced the end together, we could bind the curse. But each generation forgets, and the cycle renews. Alistair, so when the clock reaches zero, Esme, the curse claims its due. Some vanish, some go mad, and some become part of the clock's memory." She pressed a trembling hand to the rune Alistair had exposed. "You must reset it before midnight's toll on the next night, or Sable House will hold its breath forever." That night, Alistair ventured into the mansion's labyrinthine basement. Tunnels beneath the foundation twisted like roots. The air churned with the hum of unseen gears resonating from above. Guided by Esme's lantern, he found a circular chamber, its walls lined with hourglasses of black sand, each bearing a name Alistair could not read without squinting in the gloom. At the center lay the Wheel of Renewal, a massive brass circle inscribed with phases of the moon in the raven sigil. A single lever awaited. Alistair's hand hovered over it. The clock above began to toll the final three counts before 0, 3, 2, 1. Heart pounding, he pulled the lever. The wheel spun backward, each orbit reversing the hourglass's sands. The chamber trembled, and a chorus of whispers rose in a crescendo. "We remember. We remember." Then all fell silent. Alistair emerged into the grand hall just as the Night Watcher's numeral flickered from 00 back to 86,400. Dawn's first pale light broke through storm-lashed windows. The hush was gone. Birds sang outside, servants stirred in the corridors, and life resumed its course. Esme appeared in the doorway, tears of relief in her eyes. "You have renewed the cycle and released us all." Alistair touched the clock's glass face, feeling the hum of ancient power under his fingertips. He knew the curse would awaken again, but only on the day he failed. For now, Sable House exhaled, its breath mingling with dawn's breeze. Years passed, and Alistair grew into his role as Keeper of the Night Watcher. He meticulously performed the renewal ritual each night before dawn, never failing by so much as a single second. Under his stewardship, Sable House thrived. Its gardens bloomed beneath moonlight, its halls rang with laughter, and the legend of the curse faded into bedtime stories. Yet Alistair kept the ancestral key in the hourglass chamber sealed. On storm-veiled nights, when wind rattled the windows, he would pause by the clock's glow and remember Esme's trembling words. "We become part of the memory until someone sets us free." And when at last Alistair's own final night arrived, he passed the keeper's key to his daughter, whispering, "Remember our vow, renew the cycle, and guide the hours back from the brink. As the clock counted down to midnight once more, Sable House exhaled its final breath of silence, before life, placed in careful balance, began anew. At the jagged tip of the island stood the Stormwatch lighthouse, its beacon a pale, wheeling glow through the gale. Keeper Marin Calder was its sole sentinel. Each hour she climbed the spiral stairs, swept coarse hair from her eyes, and tended the great lantern's eternal flame. Mariners said her light kept the worst of the storm at bay, yet no gale, however fierce, could banish the furious clouds. One night, a ghostly ship appeared on the horizon, its tattered sails straining against seas that rose toward the roiling sky. Its sailors, black silhouettes against lightning, followed the lighthouse beam as though guided by some unseen hand. Marin watched, heart pounding, as the vessel turned inland, sliding over waves that wore shapes of drowned towns beneath their crests, before vanishing into the storm's maw. That morning, wreckage strewn on the shore bore no sign of life. Among flotsam lay an ornate compass, its needle spinning wildly. Marin collected it, feeling a sudden tug, a call from the compass's unpredictable point, drawing her deeper into the storm's secret. News of the storm's permanence had spread beyond Airhaven's cliffs. Dr. Tobias Falk, a scholar of meteorological anomalies, arrived by longboat, journal, and instruments in tow. His eyes gleamed at the first sight of the unceasing rain. "A perpetual cyclone," he murmured, "a living phenomenon." Marin, wary of outsiders, escorted him to the lighthouse. Night after night, she showed him the storm's patterns. Wind that circled without weakening, clouds layering like tides, rain that fell in sheets of silver white. Tobias measured barometric pressures that defied physics and gathered water samples alive with strange bioluminescent plankton. He hailed the storm as a world in itself, an unprecedented natural laboratory, yet Tobias spoke little of his true purpose. When Marin asked what he sought, he only tightened his coat against the damp. "Answers," he said, "to show that nature's fury can be understood." Marin suspected that Tobias hoped to stop the storm, but she dared not voice the fear stirring in her bones, that some forces, once awakened, would not be silenced. Guided by the compass's erratic needle, Marin and Tobias ventured inland on the high tide's crest. The storm's roar swallowed all sound but its own. Under leaden skies and thorn-yew arches, they found Blackmarsh Hollow, a once bustling village now abandoned, half submerged in peat and mire. Roofs sagged, doors hung on broken hinges. A hush lay over the ruined streets, broken only by the rain's relentless patter. In the central square, an ancient well gaped. Water poured from its stones like living veins, feeding the swamp. On its rim lay a weathered inscription, "When man would chain the sky, the earth shall weep forever." Tobias traced the words with trembling fingers. "A warning or a curse," he whispered. Marin drew near. "If we wish to free the sky, we must heed the earth's lament." She peered into the well's dark throat and saw shapes swirling in the water. Visions of the lighthouse, of the sea, and of the storm itself, seeking release from eternity. They returned to the lighthouse with the well's water, its surface alive with phosphorescent light. Tobias proposed a ritual drawn from a forgotten grimoire. Bind the storm's essence to the compass and then release it back into the well. On the storm's anniversary, when the first drop had fallen, they ascended into the lantern room. Wind rattled the glass. Lightning braided the sky. By lantern and compass light, Tobias recited incantations. "Wind of wrath, rain unbound, cease thy howl, return to ground. Lightning's lash, thunder's roar, be undone forevermore." As he spoke, Marin poured the well's water over the compass. The needle stilled, then pointed resolutely toward the sea. The lantern's flame flared, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Below, the gale rushed in as though invited. The storm's roar climbed the lighthouse like a living beast. Marin felt the tower quake. Suddenly, the compass shattered in her hand. A thunderclap shook the island. The well's water back in Black Marsh Hollow boiled into vapor, rising in a column of mist that pierced the clouds. When Marin and Tobias emerged from the lighthouse at dawn, though the sky remained gray, there was no rain, no wind, no thunder. Only the persistent drip of water from rooftops. Debris lay sodden but still. The sea lay flat as glass. The never-ending storm had ended. Villagers emerged from their homes, blinking at the still air, and the grass bowed with raindrops. Tobias wept with joy, measuring the final gusts on his anemometer. Marin, clutching the compass's broken housing, felt both relief and regret. The storm had been a curse, but it had also been a guardian, reshaping the island's soul. Decades passed. Airhaven's fields flourished. The lighthouse's lantern was retired as a relic. Tobias published treatises that reshaped meteorology. Marin's name was spoken in reverent tones by mariners who once feared the backward current. Yet on storm-lurched nights, when thunder growled in the distance, those who passed the old well in Black Marsh Hollow claimed to see a single drop of water rise from the earth, an echo of the storm's first breath, a reminder that some tempests leave their mark forever. And at the Lighthouse Museum, behind glass and locked gates, hangs Tobias's shattered compass, its needle forever frozen, pointing to where the storm's heart once beat, a testament to both nature's fury and the courage to calm it. Dr. Celia Marwood, a linguist of obscure dialects, first heard of the House of Whispers in the dusty archives of the Royal University. A footnote in a 17th century diary mentioned the Ward family's chorus of silent voices. Intrigued, Celia dedicated her sabbatical to investigating the phenomenon. She arrived by carriage on a late autumn afternoon, her journals and recording devices packed tight. The cottage rose before her, sills sagging, glass shattered in one window pane. A swirl of crimson leaves crawled across the stone path. Celia felt a slight tremor as she stepped forward, the air thick with faint murmurs. She pressed a hand to the door's weathered wood. It swung open of its own accord, revealing a dusty vestibule lit only by gray light. She exhaled and crossed the threshold. Celia's lantern cast quivering shadows on walls lined with mold-speckled wallpaper. As she advanced, the whispers surfaced, barely more than a breath. "Forgive me. If only I had known. Do not let them see." Her pulse quickened. She activated her recorder and spoke aloud. "Dr. Marwood here, testing auditory phenomenon in the House of Whispers." But her voice was swallowed in a dozen sighs. The whispers gathered around her, circling like moths. "Why did you leave me? You promised." "I still remember." Celia's rational mind reeled, but she pressed on. This was the data she came for. In the drawing room, a grand portrait hung askew. The Ward family in happier times. Father, mother, 2 daughters, smiling at an unseen photographer. Celia examined the painting's inscription. "The Wards, 1624. Underneath, scratched in trembling script, "Our troubles we whisper, but they do not fade." She paused. A faint rustle came from behind the sofa. As she drew near, the air swelled with voices. "Mother, I am sorry. Sister, come back. Father, forgive me." Celia realized the house absorbed every confession spoken within its walls and replayed them ceaselessly. She had stumbled into a gallery of ghosts. Shaken, she retreated to the library, where shelves sagged under the weight of moldy tomes. On a central table lay a leather-bound journal, handwritten in spidery script. September 12th. The walls remember. Each whisper rings in my ears as though I spoke it yesterday. The house hungers yet for more. The author's name was smudged, likely a Ward daughter. Celia's grip tightened on the journal. There was more to learn. Celestial darkness fell as Celia followed a spiral staircase to the upper floor. Torchlight illuminated doors green with ancient mildew. Beyond the largest door lay the nursery, once rosy, now pallid. A rocking cradle swayed of its own accord. The whispers here were softest, a lullaby half remembered. "Hush now, my dear. I am here." They spoke of a child's loneliness, a mother's sorrow. Celia closed her eyes and pressed her palm to the cradle's edge. An echo blossomed in her mind, the laughter of a little girl, long gone. Tears filled her eyes. The house's magic bridged centuries in a single moment. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement, a small figure, translucent, watching. The girl's eyes were vacant, yet imploring. Celia reached out. "I hear you. I remember you." The figure's form shimmered, then vanished, leaving only the echo of a sigh and the rocking cradle's creak. Celia realized the only way to free the trapped voices was to offer each one a chance to speak its unspoken truth, to purge the house's memory. She hurried downstairs to her equipment, planning a midnight seance. Her recorder would play back whispers. No taboo would go unspoken. At midnight, she gathered in the drawing room under the portrait. Candles flickered. She placed a small silver bowl on the table, a vessel for confessions, and began. She played a whisper. "If only I had stayed," and spoken to the bowl. "Mother stayed." Another. "You looked away. I see you now." Each confession met with acknowledgement. The bowl glowed faintly with each answer. The portrait's painted faces seemed to soften, their eyes turning downward in relief. All through the night, Celia played the house's whispers and spoke each answer aloud. The walls rang with voices, echoes until now nameless, being honored at last. As the first rays of dawn struck the windows, the final whisper faded. "I forgive myself." Celia watched the bowl's glow inch to white-hot brilliance, then vanish in a sizzle of candle wax. The hush afterward was so deep she could hear her own heartbeat echo through the silence. She rose and opened the front door. The estate's staff, who had waited outside fearful, gathered in awe. They looked to the house expecting new murmurs, but none came. Only the wind in the ivy and the song of birds. The house of whispers remains atop its cliff, its countless voices quiet at last. Celia published her findings and preserved the war journal in the National Archives. The house became a refuge for those burdened by unspoken grief. Pilgrims who came to place their confessions in the silver bowl, ensuring that no sorrow need be carried alone. At dusk, visitors might glimpse Celia seated on the front steps, gazing at the ivy's dance. She pours tea, not for ghosts, but for the living, sharing warmth where once only hushed remorse lingered. And when the moon rises over Briarwood, you can stand before the silent walls and feel not the chill of unending echoes, but the quiet comfort born of voices finally set free. Let your heart speak that the shadows within may find their rest. Aurelia Hart had known only gray skies and winter's chill since her mother's passing. As head gardener at Windhaven Manor, she coaxed roses and dahlias through sunlit days, but her own heart remained frozen, a barren plot beneath her ribs. When a withered vine snapped in her fingers, she felt her despair deepen. One evening, her mentor, Old Master Gardener Rowan Thorne, placed a folded letter in her trembling hand. "Seek the nocturne garden. Find the gate of ivy at midnight. Your heart's thaw awaits." Rowan's eyes glimmered with hope. "I cannot guide you further," he whispered, "but the garden will know your need." That night, beneath a cloud-pierced moon, Aurelia left the manor, lantern in hand, and walked into the folded shadow of Blackthorn Vale. She followed a path of tangled brambles and ancient trees whose chiseled bark held runes of an earlier age. At the vale's hollow, A ring of ivy grew around a fallen obelisk. The ivy's leaves were silver in moonlight, and at its center lay a keyhole shaped like a crescent moon. Aurelia inserted Rowan's key, a twisted iron thing, and the ivy side open, parting to reveal a narrow tunnel through living greenery. Each leaf brushed her cheek like a whisper. Welcome, welcome. She stepped through and emerged into darkness, in the faint glow of fireflies dancing over a still pool. Ahead rose wrought iron gates, aquamarine with lichen, their spires topped by blooms of midnight blue. Beyond them lay the nocturne garden. Aurelia crossed the threshold. The air was cool and sweet with nocturnal bloom. Night-blooming jasmine, moonflowers unfurling like silver sails, and ghost orchids glowing pale as lanterns. Pathways of crushed obsidian guided her feet, and benches of white marble dotted the lawns. At the center stood Aloan's fountain, an alabaster statue of a kneeling woman offering a bowl. Its waters were ink black, reflecting stars overhead. On the fountain's rim lay a single blossom, a knight's heart. Its petals burned with soft violet light. Aurelia reached for the bloom and felt memories stir. Her mother's laughter by candlelight, sun-dappled walks through summer gardens, the soft brush of her mother's cheek. Tears blurred her vision as she plucked the knight's heart, and the petals fluttered away, carried by unseen breeze. Clutching the fallen bloom, Aurelia ventured deeper, toward a labyrinth of midnight hedges. Within the maze's center, topiary beasts, lions, stags, griffins, stood frozen. A hush fell. The knight's heart glowed in her palm, casting dancing shadows on sculpted leaves. A gentle voice echoed, "To find what you have lost, face the guardian of memory." From the hedges stepped a stag wrought of vine and shadow, antlers dripping with dew. It regarded Aurelia with glowing eyes. Heart pounding, she knelt and offered the knight's heart bowl to the beast. Its antlers bent, dripping petals into the bowl. The petals formed a luminous pool, and in its surface she saw her mother's face, smiling, serene. Aurelia wept. The stag bowed its head and dissipated into mist, dissolving the labyrinth walls. Beyond the maze, a clearing of black roses awaited. Their petals curled inward, as though suffering some silent pang. Aurelia realized the garden itself grieved. It wept blossoms that could not fully bloom under endless night. She pressed Rowan's letter to her heart. "Your heart's thaw awaits." With trembling fingers, she scattered her own tears among the rose beds. The water gleamed like liquid silver. One by one, the black roses unfurled, revealing petals tipped in violet flame. Their scent wove a melody through the clearing, a song of healing and hope. As she stepped from the clearing, the first pale streaks of dawn brushed the horizon. An event the nocturne garden had not seen in centuries. The moonflowers closed, giving their last shimmer, and fireflies winked out. The wrought iron gates began to glow, guiding her back toward the gate of ivy. Aurelia emerged into dawn's gentle light. Behind her, the ivy gate closed with a whisper, and the veil's mist reclaimed its secrets. In her hand, she carried a single seed from the knight's heart, warm, alive, and pulsing with the garden's magic. Back at Windhaven Manor, Aurelia planted the seed at her mother's resting place. Each morning, a new violet sprout unfurled in sunlight. As months passed, the night-blooming garden grew beneath the hearth's moonlit lamp, bringing solace to the manor's cold halls. Rowan visited at dusk, marveling at silver vines climbing the trellis. "You have brought the garden's gift home," he said, pride shining in his eyes. Aurelia smiled, fingertips brushing a single opening knight's heart petal. "In darkness we find what light cannot reveal, and in light we heal what darkness could not bury." The story of the nocturne garden passed into local lore, a place that blooms in darkness, hidden by ivy and mist, awaiting the hearts ready to see. Aurelia became its keeper by day, tending her moonlit blooms by candle, and its pilgrim by night, marching back to Blackthorn Vale whenever sorrow called her name. And under every new moon, when the world turns quiet and still, a single violet flame flickers in the vale, proof that even in deepest darkness, beauty awakens and hearts can bloom once more. Marisol Hadley had never believed in ghosts. An urban engineer by trade, she arrived at Embermarsh with plans to automate the old lighthouse, modernizing its mechanisms and retiring the keeper's lantern to history. She stepped off the rattling launch as thunder cracked overhead and a wall of sea spray crowned the quay. At the base of the cliff stood the lighthouse, stoic and weathered. A single path, cut into black basalt, wound upward toward the lantern room's faint glow. Marisol climbed, dragging her suitcases through the salt-choked wind. Inside, she found the current keeper, a silver-haired man named Corbin Price, tending the light. He nodded once without surprise. "You must be the new keeper," he said, voice echoing like distant surf. "The light called you." Marisol stiffened. I'm here to install the automation gear." Corbin's gaze drifted seaward. "Tonight is the storm's eve. The light will want what it wants." Marisol frowned, but as she watched the lens spiral in its mechanics, she sensed a deeper purpose. Corbin handed her a brass key etched with an anchor entwined in willow, the keeper's key. "Trust the light," he said, and slipped away down the spiral stairs. At dusk, Marisol entered the lantern room. The vast Fresnel lens gleamed like a galaxy of prisms, and at its center burned a pale, unwavering flame. She flicked switches to engage the backup electrics, but the light died instantly. All that remained was the hearth's ancient wick, burning with soft heartbeat. From beyond the glass, she heard murmur. Not wind against the panes, but whispers, soft as prayer, as though the sea itself breathed names. Anna, Thomas, Mother. Each name chilled her blood. The light pulsed, and in its ray she saw forms drifting just beyond the cresting waves, figures in mourning shawls, sailors with hollow eyes, children cradled by ghostly arms. A swell of compassion rose in Marisol's chest. She realized the automation would drown these voices and erase the light's true purpose. With trembling resolve, she left the dungeon's switches untouched. That night, a tempest roared in from the northwest. Marisol climbed the steps once more as rain hammered the tower like thousands of stone fists. In the lantern room, the storm's fury rattled the glass, but the flame stood firm. Beneath its glow, the apparitions gathered. A woman in bridal white, her gown tattered but her eyes bright with longing. A sailor clutching a lantern. An old man in captain's coat, his gaze fixed on Marisol with gratitude. Marisol spoke aloud, voice trembling. "I will not leave you in the dark." She lit extra candles along the lens's foot, bathing the room in golden warmth. The spirits drifted close, coalescing around her with sighs of relief. As the storm peaked, one ghost, an orphaned girl clutching a ragged doll, slipped forward. She pointed seaward. In that moment, Marisol understood. The light guided not only ships, but souls lost at sea, guiding them to shore's first safe gleam and onward toward rest. At dawn, the sea lay still, but along the southern cove lay the Gossamer Rocks, treacherous reefs known to wreck even wary captains. There, half buried in kelp, Marisol discovered the remains of a schooner, the Aurora Belle, reported missing during a gale 10 years prior. Curious villagers gathered as she led them to the wreck. Climbing aboard, she found a single journal, its pages waterlogged but legible. "We saw the light, so clear it pierced the darkness. We thought we were saved. Then the reef struck. Our aft mast cracked like bone. I pray the light carries our souls home." Marisol read the final entry by torchlight, tears in her eyes. She mounted the path in darkness, returning to the lantern room. The phantom voices swelled. The Aurora bells passengers, thanking her. Marisol whispered a vow. I will keep this beacon alive, for ships and souls. A fortnight later, the sky bled red with a lunar eclipse, known locally as the moon's shadow. On such nights, the boundary between worlds thins. Marisol felt it in her bones as she climbed to the lantern room. Outside, the sea gleamed with crimson light. Inside, dozens of ghosts circled the flame. Lost sailors, drowned children, a mother forever searching the tide. Corbin's voice drifted through the open door. He carried a battered lantern filled with moonlight. Corbin, on the eclipse, the light must be shared. Hold this flame alongside yours. Marisol accepted the lantern. Together they held both lights before the great lens. The Fresnel spiraled dual beams outward, one golden, one pale, and the specters surged forward, their forms brightening. Each found peace in the twin lights, their outlines softening until they drifted toward the lens's glow, passing through the glass into the storm-racked sea beyond. When the eclipse ended and the moon's crimson faded, only two keepers remained in the lantern room, one of flesh, one of moonlight, and the flame burned steady. Years passed. Marisol became the keeper of Stormwatch, her hair threaded with silver as her vow never wavered. She taught apprentices in the old ways, how to trim wicks to a cry's pitch, how to temper lantern glass with tears of compassion, how to read the voices in the gale. Corbin remained her companion until age claimed him. Then she forged a new partnership with Marin, a young woman whose own soul had brushed the edge between life and death. Together they guided every ship through the reef and every wandering soul back to shore. On calm nights when a lone sailor hailed the light, he would glimpse a lantern by the cliffs, two lights dancing together, and he would whisper a prayer of thanks, whether he knew his savior walked in flesh or shadow. To this day, the Stormwatch lighthouse stands atop its cliff, flame undimmed by wind or rain. Its light, both golden and pale, reaches across the furious sea and the silent beyond. Fishermen bring lanterns of their own to its base each winter solstice, and villagers leave flowers for those who never made it home. And if you ever find yourself lost, whether upon a lee shore or at the edge of your own memory, look for the twin lights through tempest or moon shadow. Let them guide you safely in. For in Ember Marsh they say, no soul should wander unlit, no heart should endure the night alone. And in that promise, the lighthouse that guides lost souls shines on, an eternal beacon for all who stray beyond the safe harbor of life. Eric Breton was a mapmaker by trade and a skeptic by nature. When the mayor of Eastford commissioned him to chart every bend of the Reth before the planned dam, Eric accepted eagerly. He rode at dawn with quills, ink, and surveying tools, confident that rivers obey gravity everywhere. At the delta, he marveled as the sea lapped upstream, a silent battle of waters that left whitecaps chasing inland. Arik dipped his hand into the current, coarse with sand, heavy with salt. He tasted it and spat, grimacing. Then he followed the flow upriver, measuring depths and currents, plotting each bend with precision. By sundown, he reached the first waterfall, water plunging downward, yet below it, the river still climbed. Arik's heart thudded. He scratched hastily on his map. Reth rises through falls. Current defies all logic. Sleep eluded him that night as he pondered a river that refused nature's laws. The following day, Arik encountered old Willem, a river fisherman whose boat hung empty on the bank. Best you turn back, Willem warned, voice hushed. The river's backward heart hides more than salt and stones. Arik frowned. I've traced upstream nearly 20 miles. There's nothing but clear water and peaceful banks. Willem's eyes darted. Peaceful until the river remembers. Last week, my brother sailed those waters to fish the upward tide. They found his boat empty, hull full of the ocean's tongues, but no soul aboard. The backward flow took him, down where it shouldn't go. Arik's skepticism wavered. He offered Willem coin for a guide, but the fisherman shook his head. A river that flows in reverse demands respect, not charts. Undeterred but uneasy, Erik pressed on alone. By the third night, the Reth carried Arik away from bright towns into dark woods. He found a village nestled among cypress and alder, its name scratched on a sign, Greenford. Yet the home stood empty, lights unlit, doors gaped open. Inside, chairs lay overturned, cups on tables half full of cold tea. In the square, a lone note pinned to the notice board read, "The tide returns, beware the inverted flow." Erik's lantern revealed footprints leading toward the riverbank. He followed them to a small pier where a boat lay half submerged, its prow pointing inland. Curiosity overcame caution. He climbed in and set out, oars unwilling to push upstream. Instead, the current guided him. As he floated past empty windows, he caught whispers. Laughter from children who once played here, sobs of sorrow too deep to place, songs from no living lips. The current carried memory itself, echoes of vanished souls. Erik's blood ran cold. He leapt into the shallows and staggered ashore, vowing never to return. The next morning, Arik awoke at the river's edge, soaked and shaken. His maps lay waterlogged. He packed hastily and followed a narrow trail into the mountains. Soon the Reth plunged into a deep gorge walled with basalt columns, each one etched with strange runes. He realized the river was carving its own path, creating canyons as it flowed inward. The air reverberated with rushing water from above, yet below him the river still climbed against gravity. There he met the river's priestess, cloaked in kelp green robes. Her hair was wrapped with strands of riverweed, her eyes reflecting the backward flow. "You map the unchartable," she said softly. "Why?" Arik swallowed. "To understand, to prove the impossible." She studied him. The Reth carries memory backward. Its source lies in a time before its birth. Search no further. The current you follow is not simply water, but the reversed pulse of ages. Those who seek its origin vanish into the river's heart. Before he could reply, she slipped away into the shadows. Arik stood alone, the river's roar echoing in his chest. Haunted by the priestess's warning, Erik camped at the gorge's edge. At midnight, he heard footsteps on the cliff above. Cautious, he climbed to a narrow ledge where cold air hissed from a fissure in the rock. Inside, a hidden spring bubbled with luminous water, flowing not downward, but upward, feeding the Reth's backward current. Arik knelt, touched the water, and visions flooded him. A grove of ancestral trees, a council of druids chanting under moonlight. A pact sealed to reverse time's flow for one night. The druid Alariel's voice rose. "Let the river run backward, undo the sorrow we wrought." He saw the faces of those lost in childhood wars, errors undone, yet new wounds born. He realized the backward flow was never meant to be permanent, but the pact had been broken and the river cursed. The spring's runes glowed as though sensing his understanding. They seared into his mind. Renew the cycle by offering the river's reversed heart. Dawn's first light fractured the visions. Erik scrambled back to camp, mind racing with dread. At dusk, Arik returned to the spring. He had fashioned a bowl from pure silver, inscribed with his own blood-orange glyphs of atonement. He poured his collected maps, charts of coastlines, sketches of tributaries, the symbols he had painstakingly drawn, into the spring. Each parchment dissolved, releasing ink like droplets of night. The spring's waters churned. The river's backward pulse quivered, then faltered. A great roar echoed through the gorge as the upstream flow weakened. Arik braced himself as the water level shifted. The liquid mirror of the spring tipped, sending a wave over him. He staggered back to the gorge's mouth as the first true current in centuries rushed downstream. The Reth's waters roared into their natural bed, carrying the memory of ages away toward the sea. When Auric reached the river bank below the gorge, he saw the Reth flowing once more toward the ocean. Fishermen in Greenford hauled their nets. Crowds gathered in Eastford waved at the returning tide, and downstream he heard the bells of Briarcliff calling for sunrise. Eric stood at the delta, watching the sea swallow the last drop of backward water. He felt both triumph and sorrow. The river's cursed gift was undone, yet countless memories stored in its flow were lost. His maps lay dissolved in that hidden spring. No chart could ever recapture the backward-seen wonders of the inverted tide. Eric returned to Brambleford a changed man. He never wrote a single map of the Reth's unusual course. Instead, he penned the Journal of the Inverted Tide, a chronicle of his journey, its lessons, and the caution that some forces are not meant to bend to human will. The journal concluded, "The river's flow is memory. To reverse it is to tamper with the heart of time itself. We may mend our errors, but we must honor the path we follow, lest we break the current of all things." No modern atlas shows the Reth flowing upstream, but in quiet libraries and dusty archives, Auric's journal survives, a testament to a river that once reversed its tide, carrying sorrow and hope backward through time, and to the cartographer brave enough to follow its course, and to let it return home. And on misty mornings in Calder's Reach, villagers still speak in awe of the inverted river and of the man who dared to walk its backward path before it found its way once more. It was well past harvest season when the bell tolled. The autumn moon hung wan and sickle thin, and frost jeweled the thatched roofs. Marin Hawk, daughter of the chapel's keeper, stirred from uneasy dreams as the air thrummed with that uncanny resonance. She sat bolt upright in her narrow bed, heart pounding. Through her window she saw the tower's silhouette against the sky, and as she watched, the great bronze bade the world tremble. By dawn, a pall of dread had settled over Gallamere. In the market square, merchants spoke of the toll in fearful whispers. It can only mean, they said, that disaster follows on its heels. Farmers abandoned fields to pray. Blacksmiths laid aside their hammers to gaze at the horizon. From the old mill to the lighthouse, every soul wondered what calamity the bell might foretell. The next sunrise found the town's council convened in the Guildhall. Mayor Aldwyn Merrick, grave of face, presided. Seated with him were the abbess, Sister Lena, the master builder Rowan Cortez, and the healer Illyra Miles. Marin accompanied her father, Keeper Bryn Hawk, trembling as he bore the keys to the belfry. The bell tolled for the first time in 80 years, Mayor Merrick began. We must prepare. Yet to prepare for what? Flood? Famine? Worse? Sister Lena knelt, eyes closed. The bell's voice speaks of imbalance. Nature's warning. We must seek the old lore buried in St. Elfric's crypt and interpret its omens. Rowan, ever practical, tapped his staff. Walls need reinforcing. Food stores must be shored. Let us act on solid steps rather than superstition. But Elira's gaze held Marin fast. The land balks at our hubris. The bell tolls to remind us we are mortal. If we heed its call with humility, caring for the poor, mending rifts, sharing our stores, we may avert disaster. A compromise formed. Search the crypt's tablets, secure the town's defenses, and rally the community to unity. Marin crept through candlelit corridors beneath St. Elfric's, her lantern casting trembling shadows upon stone arches. At her side, scholar Tamsin Reed, whose keen mind had deciphered half-forgotten runes, led the way to the crypt. There, carved tablets recounted earlier tollings, a plague in 426, a flood in 712, and a dragon's passage in 1041. Each entry ended with the same admonition: hear the bell, act with compassion, lest calamity be unbound. Tamsin traced a final, weather-worn tablet. When the tide of mercy runs dry, the bell shall toll, and from fractured hearts will rise the storm. Marin's breath caught. It warns not only of disaster, but that our own failures, our cruelty or neglect, will summon it. They emerged at dawn's light, hearts heavy with the crypt's counsel. As days passed, Gallowmere was plagued not by natural disasters, but by human strife. Corn rotted in untended fields as strangers fought with longtime neighbors over dwindling stores. In the smithy, Rowan's hammer rang hollow, his forge falling silent as men quarreled over metal. Sister Lena's alms for the poor went unclaimed in bitterness. Elira found her chapel door barred by angry parishioners demanding reprieve. Marin watched her beloved town fray at the seams. She realized the bell's warning had gone unheeded. Compassion had withered. One midnight, as the bell tolled again, its note deeper, more sorrowful, she rushed to the square, standing beneath its shadow. Raising her voice, she spoke to the sleeping town. We are the authors of our own ruin. The bell tolls because we turn from each other. If we act in charity, if we heal instead of harm, we can quell its lament. Her cry carried through empty streets. Dawn light found Marin kneeling before the bell tower with Rowan, Illyra, Tamsin, and small clusters of townsfolk gathering, knelt in prayer and resolve. Together they vowed to restore unity and mercy. Over the next fortnight, Gallowmere changed. Meadow farmers shared their dwindling grain with the hungry. The smith's forge glowed nightly as weapons were laid aside and plowshares turned. Church bells rang with hymns of solidarity. The sick flocked to Elira, who now found her doors open and hearts softened. Arguments in the tavern transformed into planning sessions for mutual aid. On the night of the second full moon after the first toll, Marin stood with the council beneath a sky of molten silver. The bell tower loomed above. The hour passed, yet the bell remained silent. A hush of relief followed, but Marin knew they must remain vigilant. But complacency is a fragile shield. Months later, when the spring thaw arrived, a deluge descended, a cataclysm of rain that burst the river Lartha's banks. Homes were swept away, bridges collapsed, and livestock perished. The bell tolled in the heart of that flood, its peal drowned in the roaring waters, but still it rang. Amid the storm, Marin and Tamsin braved the floodwaters, rescuing villagers clinging to rooftops. Rowan and his apprentices built emergency levees. Illyra comforted the bereaved, her prayers as earnest as gold. The community united once more, but at great cost. Queen's Bridge lay shattered, farms lay bereft of seed, and memories of the floods scarred every face. When the waters finally receded, Gallowmere found itself at another crossroads. The bell had tolled despite their earlier compassion. What lesson remained? In the charred remains of Queen's Bridge, Marin discovered a final inscription. Etched by some long-ago apprentice, disaster refines the heart. Compassion cannot shield us from all storms, but it gives us strength to rebuild what is broken. She unfurled the banner she and the villagers had crafted after the first toll, Mercy Unites, and hung it upon the ruins. Together they cleared debris, salvaged timber, and vowed to build a new bridge stronger and more beautiful than before. Months of labor followed. As the new Queen's Bridge arched gracefully over the restored river, townsfolk gathered for its dedication. Marin stood with the council beneath the tower of St. Elfric's. As they called the bridge, Bridge of Mercy, the bell tolled, once gently, as though in blessing. Years passed and Gallowmere prospered. The bell's tolls became rarer, but no less sacred. Each time it rang unbidden, the villagers remembered its lesson, that compassion alone cannot prevent every disaster, but without it, no triumph endures. Marin, now keeper of the bell tower alongside her mother's old post as scribe, recorded each toll in the Chronicles of Mercy. On nights of clear moonlight, She would climb the spiral stairs, place her hand upon the bronze, and whisper a prayer for watchfulness. And so the bell of Harbinger's call remained, a sentinel of sound and spirit, tolling before disaster, reminding all who heard its voice that the truest safeguard against calamity lies in hearts bound by mercy and in hands ever ready to rebuild what darkness seeks to destroy. Emran Nail was a cartographer by birth and obsession. His maps adorned the Hall of Duke Hallward in Briarcliff, tracing every mountain, river, and ruin. Yet none could chart the unseen realms beyond the horizon, realms he yearned to discover. When his master's daughter, Lady Evelyn, fell to a wasting sickness that no healer could cure, Emran's maps turned useless, his pride hollow. On the night of the Midwinter Festival, Emran stood alone atop Castle Hill, staring into the pale haze. A phantom wind carried a scent of ozone in distant seas. As the final firework faded, a line of glowing cobblestones materialized, spiraling into the mist. He recognized at once the glyphs, not on any map, but dreamt only in the half-remembered tales his grandmother once told him. The way of lost stars had come. With a tremor of hope and dread, Emran stepped onto the first stone. The cobbled road led him through veils of mist to a shoreline of pale quartz sand. Silver waves lapped against a beach strewn with fragments of star glass, shards that glowed faintly when touched. Emran picked one up and felt a pulse in his palm, as if it held a heartbeat. At the water's edge lay a small boat carved from white bone. Its prow bore the sigil of a winged serpent, and across its gunwale ran a phrase in Emran's grandmother's language: "To realms forgotten, where dreams may yet be born." He stepped into the boat, and it drifted out under a sky lit by two suns, one green, one violet, hovering at dawn's edge. As Emran paddled, the sea shifted beneath him. Sunken spires breached the surface. Coral palaces shimmered below, and creatures of impossible geometry swam in and out of sight. The shore of shifting dreams faded into mist behind him as the road continued on the water. When the boat touched land again, it was on the quay of a city built beneath a lilac moon. Tower roofs gleamed in purple light. Bridges of crystalline glass spanned canals of molten silver. Statues of winged philosophers stood sentinel on every corner. Merchants in twilight-hued robes hawked wares forged from nebula dust. Emran wandered into a marketplace at the heart of the city, where a banner read, "Welcome, wanderer from forgotten paths." A tall figure draped in star-patterned robes greeted him. "I am Mariol the Archivist," she said, her voice echoing like wind through chimes. "This is Astravor, city of half-remembered knowledge. Here, every thought once lost finds a home." In Astravor's grand library, Emran discovered tomes that recorded events never in any mortal year: the founding of worlds in crystal conclaves, battles between sentient storms, reign of silver birds that carried dreams. Yet one volume remained sealed, the Codex of Cured Hearts. Emran's heart ached for Avalon's cure. He begged Mariol to grant him the Codex. "First," the archivist told him, "you must add your own memory to our vault, your journey on the way of lost stars." Emran stood before a mirror of polished obsidian and recounted every step. His love for Avalon, his shame at failing her, his hope in the road's promise. As he spoke, his reflection shimmered and a memory scroll unrolled, taking its place among Astravor's archives. The Codex unsealed with a whisper. Emran opened its pages. To cure the broken heart, one must bind hope to memory and let it flow across worlds. A single phrase glowed: "Bring the heart's echo to the rose of rebirth." Mariol smiled. "Your path unfolds further. Seek the rose on the forest of silent whispers." Bidding farewell to Astravor, Emran found the way's next cobbled marker at the end of an aqueduct that vanished into sunrise. He stepped through, and the forest rose around him, tall lilac trees whose leaves resembled moth wings and vines that hummed soft melodies. The hush was so absolute he could hear his own heartbeat. Deep within the forest lay a grove of pale roses, petals like opalescent tears, growing around a stone basin of still water. The air tasted of longing. Remembering the Codex's words, Emran hummed Aveline's favorite lullaby, letting the melody drift across the grove. The roses trembled, shedding petals that drifted into the basin. The water glowed, and from its surface rose a single bloom, its center pulsing with warm light. Emran plucked the rose of rebirth and pressed it to his chest. He felt every note of the lullaby become a current in his heart, hope weaving through sorrow. And so armed, he sought the final passage home. In the forest darkness, Emran found the last waymarker, a spiral of runes etched in moss-covered stones. He placed the rose at its center, reciting the Codex's incantation. By stars' lost path and memory's song, let love's cure guide me where I belong. The stones glowed in spectral fire, unfolding into a tunnel of starlit mist that poured him back onto Blackmore's hill. The dawn he saw was familiar, yet fresh, golden light pouring over Briarcliff's spires and the Black Sea beyond. Clutching the rose, Emran raced to Aveline's bedside in the manor's high chamber. Her cheeks were still pale, but her breaths were steadier. He placed the rose upon her chest and whispered the lullaby one last time. Petal by petal, the bloom's light pulsed across her heart, knitting hope into her veins. Aveline's eyes fluttered open, first confusion, then joy, speaking his name in a trembling voice. With Aveline restored, Emran set aside his old maps. The Way of Lost Stars had given him new purpose, to record the realms he had seen and to guide others upon paths that defied every boundary. He bound his journals into 12 volumes, the Chronicles of Forgotten Worlds, illustrated with star charts, moonglyphs, and lullabies of roselight memory. In Briarcliff, he founded the House of the Wayward Star, where travelers who glimpsed the way could share their tales. Aveline, healed and hopeful, presided over the Hall of Rebirth, tending rose gardens that bloomed beneath lanterns of starlight. Together, they taught that every road, no matter how lost, leads home when guided by love and memory, and that forgotten realms await those who seek beyond the horizon of the known. Centuries later, writers still spoke of a road that appeared when hope seemed lost, a road that shimmered beneath the stars and carried them to realms where dreams slept deep. The Chronicles of Forgotten Worlds remained a beacon to scholars and dreamers, and upon clear moonlit nights, Aveline's roses glowed in the gardens of Briarcliff, white petals pulsing in gentle rhythms, reminding all who saw them that no path is truly lost and no realm truly forgotten, so long as the heart remembers its way. Isabella Trent was a scholar of antiquities, her life devoted to dusty volumes and forgotten lore. She had spent years tracking fragments of myth, the breathstone of the sky giant, the tears of a river nymph, and now the mask of shifting visages. In the vaulted library of Windsor Hall, she unearthed a single parchment. When the mask finds its wearer, the face will form, but the true self must endure each guise or be lost forever. Her pulse quickened. A mask that could grant any face? As one whose own countenance had become weary with melancholy, her eyes too lined, her youth too faded, Isabella felt both skeptical and desperate. She resolved to find the mask no matter the cost. On a moonless eve, Isabella tracked the mask to a derelict merchant's house at the edge of Windermere's quarter of fallen trades. Among broken pottery and scattered tomes, she found it, an oval of obsidian black resin, featureless under her lantern's glow. With shaking fingers, she lifted it and placed it over her face. For a breath, she saw only darkness. Then warmth pulled across her skin, and the mask's surface rippled. Two emerald eyes blinked open where no eyes had been, cheekbones lifted like perfect carved marble, and lips curved with subtle confidence. Isabella's breath caught. She saw her own body reflected in a shattered mirror, but with a face she did not recognize. youthful, unlined, and luminous. She tore the mask away, trembling. In the mirror's fractured glass, her original visage stared back, paler now, worn by longing. But she tasted power, the chance to walk unseen, to charm, to become someone else. She tucked the mask into her satchel and fled into the night. By dawn, Isabella's new face had begun to fade. Panicked, she donned the mask again, this time willing it to restore her borrowed visage. The mask obeyed, reshaping once more into beauty's ideal. Yet when she removed it at sunrise, her true face felt less familiar. The contours had softened, lines sharpened, her original self slipping. Terrified, she sought the counsel of her friend, Cedric Vale, a physician versed in rare maladies. In his candlelit study, she revealed the mask. Cedric peered closely. Arcane craftsmanship, he mused. It bonds with the skin at a molecular level. Every change reconfigures your flesh in memory. He spoke of legends, wearers who had lost their first face entirely, their minds unraveling as identity blurred. You must find its maker or destroy it before you vanish. Isabella's heart pounded. She realized her obsession had become a trap. The mask offered endless facades, but no path back to herself. Determined, Isabella and Cedric pored over every fragment of lore. They traced the mask's origin to a remote hamlet in the Moonfall Mountains, where a reclusive artisan named Nyala once practiced alchemy with moonfire. They embarked at dawn, Isabella wearing her original face. She dared not risk another change until she knew a cure. Their journey led through storm-lashed passes and forests bright with moonlight. Bandits sought to steal her mask. Wolves stalked beneath the pines. Isabella's resolve hardened with each step. She would reclaim her identity or pay the ultimate price. At last, they found Nyala's workshop, an ancient mill carved into the mountain's heart. Inside, gears of moonstone and copper whirred with magic, and the walls were lined with sketches of masks, each more intricate than the last. At the center stood Nyala herself, an ageless woman whose face was half burned away, replaced by silver clockwork. Nyala regarded Isabella with sorrowful eyes. I fashioned the mask from shards of moonlight, seeking to grant the despairing the chance to become anew, she explained. But I failed to bind the spirit of identity. The mask steals what it grants. It reshapes the soul as well as the skin. Isabella lifted the mask. Please, help me undo this. I cannot lose myself. Nyala shook her head. The only way to break the mask's hold is to confront every face you've worn and accept each fragment of yourself within it. Only then can you reclaim your original self and sever the mask bond. She handed Isabella a silver hand mirror etched with runes. See all that you have been. Then with trembling hands, Nyala dismantled her own clockwork face, showing Isabella that no one escapes loss unscarred. Returning to Cedric's lodge, Isabella sat before the silver mirror and placed the mask upon her face once more. The borrowed visage formed, then dissolved in the mirror's glow, revealing another, a merchant's kindly features she had worn to gain favor. She whispered her memories, the greed that had driven her to deceit. The face blurred and then melted away. Again she donned the mask. This time it shaped a soldier's scarred countenance, the face she had used to command respect. She spoke of battles fought and lives taken, and of guilt that haunted her. The visage softened in the mirror, dissolving once more. All night she wore and removed the mask, facing each borrowed face and confessing its hidden truth. The diplomat's mask and the lies told in gilded halls. The beggar's guile, the petty thefts she committed out of hunger. The scholar's guise, the dreams she had sacrificed for ambition. As each face faded before the mirror, Isabella felt a weight lift from her soul. By dawn, only one face remained. Her own, pale and lined, but unchanged by the mask's magic. With the first rays of sunlight, Isabella stepped out onto Cedric's veranda. She raised the mask in both hands and spoke the name of every face it had given her faces of power and of shame. Then, with a single strike of her axe, she shattered the mask against the stone parapet. Its pieces glittered like starlight, then disintegrated into dust that the morning breeze carried away. Isabella touched her own face in the dawn light, feeling its contours real and irrevocable. Cedric emerged, eyes brimming, and embraced her. "You are yourself once more," he whispered. Isabella returned to Windermere, her maps and scrolls replaced by a new calling, to help others find and accept their true faces. She opened the House of Mirrors, a sanctuary where seekers confronted their own reflections, confessed their hidden truths, and learned that no mask, however beguiling, could grant peace. She wrote her story in a leather-bound tome, "The Faces I Have Worn," a chronicle of every visage and the soul within. In its final chapter, she penned, "Let no shadowed mask tempt you to become another. Embrace your own face, however marred, for it is the map to your true self." And though the world still whispered of a mask made of moonlight and sorrow, none who visited the House of Mirrors ever forgot Isabella's lesson, that the greatest transformation lies not in changing one's face, but in accepting the face that bears the journey's scars.